Oh, the Cleveland Browns. Ever since they came back into existence, starting with the 1999 NFL season, we've had one truth that we all know. It is the reality. They have been beyond question the skid marks of the National Football League. No question. Worst run organization in the league by a mile. And there have been other poorly run organizations for some or most of that time. Jacksonville Jaguars currently, Buffalo Bills during that same time frame. Hell, even the Cleveland Browns have at least made a playoff appearance since 1999. The last time the Bills made a playoff appearance was in 1999. With that said, we all know this is the worst run organization in the NFL, has been for years. And every couple of years, there's a change at the top, there's a change at the head coaching position, and ultimately the result is the same. The true definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's where the Cleveland Browns find themselves after so many years. The true definition of insanity. However, with that said, there could be a small glimmer of hope on the horizon. This could be the beginning of better days to come for the Cleveland Browns organization, for the Cleveland Browns fans, for frankly, the city of Cleveland. And you get to the point where, while they are a long ways away, and they are still a bad football team, you could potentially see the possibility of what they could begin to be. And that's huge, because for all of the years and all of the blown draft picks, all the busts at the quarterback position, all the head coaches, the general managers, the team presidents, you wonder if now finally Cleveland, the Browns, are starting to figure it out. And I look at this team, and you know who they remind me of a lot? The 2014 Oakland Raiders. They really do. An organization that had bad leadership, bad ownership at the top for a long time, especially in Al Davis's last decade on this planet. He was in such a panic to win now. He had lost touch. He didn't know what he was doing at that point in time. And he ran the organization into the ground. So you got to 2014. You had a new general manager. Al had passed away. You have new ownership and his son Mark. New general manager, new owner. Then you go out in that draft, you get Khalil Mack with the 5th overall pick and turn around in round 2 and get Derek Carr. And even though that 2014 season was still rough, the Oakland Raiders lost, their first, I can't even remember, like the first 10 games or so. But they won a few before the end of the year. And in that time, what was established was that Khalil Mack was an all-star. He was everything I talked about heading into that 2014 draft. And we also found out that Derek Carr had some potential. We found out that Derek Carr could potentially be that guy. And over the next couple of seasons, as you built the team around Derek Carr on the offensive side of the ball, Khalil Mack on the defensive side of the ball, the Raiders aren't a joke anymore. The Raiders are one of the premier teams in the NFL, specifically in the AFC, and one of those few teams that will be thought of as a potential contender for the New England Patriots this year. In 3 short years, so much changed. 3 short years. So for all of you Cleveland fans that have had to suffer through so many years of this crappy organization and them clearly being the brown stain, the skid marks of the National Football League, just know that better days could be ahead. And everything on everything that you have to be about this year is mostly having to hope that Myles Garrett and Deshaun Kaiser are your Khalil Mack and Derek Carr. Because if they are, then better days will be here very, very soon. And so often we talk about why the Cleveland Browns are bad. And there are a variety of reasons. Bad ownership, numerous changes in team presidents and general managers and head coaches. That all contributes. A lack of stability leads to a lack of effective performance on the football field. There's no question. Organizations with that much turmoil at the top do not do well. And that's not just in the NFL. That is the business world in general. If you have that much turmoil from the CEO level on through all the different levels of management, how is your organization going to be successful? They're just not. Because you're always changing philosophies. You spend so much energy and resources trying to catch up with a new way just to change to a different way. And then that new way eventually becomes the old way, and then you do a new way. And it's a cycle of suck that business organizations can get stuck into. And the Cleveland Browns have. And we could talk about all of the starting quarterbacks that they've had since 1999. And frankly, there's too many of them for me to memorize every single one of them. I'm sure I remember a good portion of them. Nor do I want to take the time to actually read the list. You can look it up yourself, but we all know it's bad. But one of the real reasons the Cleveland Browns are as bad as they are is years of poor drafting. All these times that they've traded down and gotten additional picks, and frankly, it hasn't mattered. And when you look in particular, not just at that, but more importantly, the execution with said picks since 2011, it's been a complete and total unmitigated disaster. Instead of drafting Julio Jones in 2011, the Cleveland Browns traded down, which ultimately became Phil Taylor and a first-round pick in 2012. Where is Phil Taylor? He's not on this team anymore, and I believe he's out for the year with a quad injury for the Washington Redskins. So that's your 2011 first-round pick, who should be a cornerstone of your franchise, no longer in the picture. 2012's draft, Trent Richardson, 3rd overall. We all know how that played out. Then that second first-round pick, number 22 overall, went to Brandon Weeden. Again, those two guys, complete flameouts, complete bust. Within a couple of years, they were both gone from the team, and they are now, I believe, both gone from the NFL. 2013, Barkevious Mingo went 6th overall, and he was a disaster. 2014, Justin Gilbert, Johnny Manziel, disasters. Disasters. Then you look at 2015. You've got Danny Shelton, who's still with the team and a starter, but is that just more so because of a lack of credible options opposite him? He's been a little bit disappointing, although I thought he was better in year 2. And then Cameron Irving, who was such a flop, ultimately, that the Browns traded him to the Kansas City Chiefs for, I believe, a 5th-round pick in the 2018 draft. So a guy you took in the first round, 2 years later, you're trading him for a 5th-round pick. So just to recap, since 2011, there's been a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 first-round picks the Cleveland Browns have had. 2011 to 2015, in 5 years, they had 8 first-round picks. One of them is a starter on the 2017 roster. And if you want to peel that back even more, 2010's first-round pick, Joe Hayden, they just cut him. Now, granted, he wasn't a bust, but he's still not there. 2009's first-round pick, another scenario where they traded down. Alex Mack has been a very good center in the league for almost a decade now, but ultimately, again, he is no longer there. So you look from a span of time from 2009 to 2015, the only first-round pick this team has left is Danny Shelton, and that may just be because they haven't run him out of town yet. That is a major reason why this organization is so bad. Trading out of slots to potentially get premium talent to sit there and look at 2014. If you remember, I blasted this organization to kingdom fucking come, even though I had Justin Gilbert highly rated. Yes, completely wrong there. But I thought it was ridiculous that they didn't take Odell Beckham Jr. If you're going to do what you did, go get Odell Beckham Jr. Now, maybe he would have flopped out in Cleveland. And God knows the suck of this organization for years could suck the life out of any prospect. But when they traded down, they passed up sometimes on premium talent. See Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr., and then the execution with those picks that they traded down, the Phil Taylors of the worlds, the Brandon Weedens of the worlds, the Johnny Manziels of the worlds, it just didn't work out. So it's interesting, in 2017, they went down really the same path again, just like they did in 2016. But as bad as 2016 was, a team that won one game, and that was kind of a flukish closest victory against the San Diego Chargers, they still won one game. Still a long road to go. I'm at least happy that the Cleveland Browns kept Hugh Jackson in the fold, because I do feel at this time he is the right guy for the job. And ultimately, you had to hire him knowing that what few decent players you have, you were going to let go or get rid of anyways, that you were really starting off with a semi-tank job anyways, intentional, unintentional, doesn't matter. You had to know that things were going to be bad. But you needed to start something. You needed to create a program. And Hugh Jackson is a guy to me to build that program and, kind of mold the shape of your organization around. And you saw good things out of this team in 2016, even though they absolutely sucked. And honestly, they're probably going to suck a big one again in 2017. But it will all be about progression and growth and improvement and positioning yourselves to improve in 2018 and beyond. Now, this team didn't just set on its laurels in the offseason. I really like what they did with the offensive line, going and getting Kevin Zeitler. You improve your interior offensive line while at the same time weakening a divisional rival, in this case the Cincinnati Bengals. They brought in J.C. Treader in free agency as well. So you got two starters on the interior of your offensive line. You gamble on a former first-round pick at safety in Calvin Pryor because what the hell? Yeah, I busted out for the Jets, but that's the Jets, so what the hell? They're not a whole lot better, frankly. So why not bring in a guy like this and gamble on him? And then you look at some of the other moves that were made, like last year trading for Jamie Collins in season, ultimately being able to get him locked up. You've got one of the cornerstones for your defense for the future right there. Puzzling that you would allow Terrell Pryor to leave because he was easily your best player on offense last year. But long term, maybe you didn't feel like he was going to be worth the number one wide receiver money that he was trying to command from you. And maybe you had enough faith in your organization that long term you'll find better options there. We'll see. But this 2017 NFL draft really felt like the beginning of something different for the Cleveland Browns. You get Myles Garrett at number 1 overall. Yes, he technically was not my number 1 player on the board, but he was my number 1 player on the board for the Cleveland Browns. They needed to take him. They had to take him. They were positioned to take him. And that's what they did. I feel like they've got their Khalil Mack. Then to be able and get 2 other first-round picks when all is said and done, and getting David Njoku and Jabril Peppers, and trading back, and this time actually wasn't that opposed to them trading back with that second first-round pick they had to get some additional draft pick currency for the future. And frankly, I like the execution of what they did with their first 3 picks with Myles Garrett, David Njoku, and Jabril Peppers. That feels like an organization-changing type of draft. And then in round 2, to be able to get a guy like DeShone Kizer, who was my number 2 rated quarterback on the board, just behind Patrick Mahomes, and where teams like Chicago was reaching for Trubisky at 2, frankly, the Chiefs were reaching a little bit for Mahomes at 10, and the Texans traded up and reached for Watson at 12, you could make an argument that the Cleveland Browns played the game and played the game well and had the guy with arguably the most upside out of any quarterback in this draft, maybe up to and including Mahomes, fall into their lap in the middle portion of round number 2. If you're a Cleveland fan, you hope that this was a 2014 Oakland Raiders type of draft. Because if Myles Garrett again is your Khalil Mack and DeShone Kizer is your Derek Carr, man, the future is going to look brighter in a hurry. Now, in terms of this team, the cupboard is not as bare as it once was. On the offensive side of the ball, you've got Joe Thomas, a future Hall of Famer. Like I said, you brought in Kevin Zeitler. You've actually got a pretty good offensive front. You've invested quite heavily on your offensive line. A great situation to bring a young quarterback into. Then I look at the defensive side of the ball. Last year's second-round pick, Emmanuel Ogbah. Third-round pick, Carl Nassib, in a rotation on one side. And then on the left side, you've got Myles Garrett, the number 1 overall pick, who has elite pass rush ability and potential. This is a team that could potentially get after the Big Bens and the Daltons and the Floccos in the AFC North. If you're talking about your formula for success is hopefully you find a young quarterback to build around and then you beef up the trenches. The Cleveland Browns have a decent recipe. I understand the vision. I understand the path forward. With that said, there are tons of questions about this team, though. I still don't know if their running game is good enough with the combination of Crowell and Duke Johnson. Their secondary, especially now that you've cut Joe Hayden, even though he wasn't very good the past couple of years, your secondary leaves a lot to be desired. Frankly, the wide receiver position where you've invested all those picks in the 2016 draft, you need more out of your first-round pick, Corey Coleman. The one guy that really produced consistently at the position last year, Terrell Pryor, is now gone. You know, do you think somebody like a Kenny Britt's going to come in and produce at that same level? And then the ultimate question is going to be DeShone Kizer. And even when you talk about X factors, you talk about on the offensive side of the ball, you need more out of your 2016 first-round pick, Corey Coleman. You need him to be the explosive option. You need him to be on the football field. Defensive side of the ball, to be the X factor, is Danny Shelton, your 2015 first-round pick you took 12th overall. You need him to pan out because you've had so many picks between 2011 and 2015, premium first-round picks, that did not pan out. But even as important as Myles Garrett is, and he is, and you want to see him have a double-digit sack season and show you he's going to be your future franchise piece on the defensive side of the ball, your J.J. Watt, in this case, your Khalil Mack, it all comes down to DeShone Kizer this year. Even with the trading for Brock Osweiler, getting the second-round pick to give the Texans some cap room and all this other crap, you had to feel this organization very quickly was going to find a way to convince themselves that DeShone Kizer was their guy that they needed to roll with in 2017 and give them the best chance to win. Because honestly, that's a valid statement. That is a correct assessment of the situation. And ultimately, from a long-term importance to the organization, the only choice you had, even if Brock Osweiler was a slightly better option, was to trot DeShone Kizer out there for potentially 16 games in 2017 and find out what this kid has. Because if you win 3, 4, 5 games this year, knowing that your team's still not that good, but Kizer gives you enough glimmers of hope, enough promise of potential for the future like Derek Carr did for the Oakland Raiders during the 2014 season, and you see this kid can handle adversity, that he's a leader, he's got mental and physical toughness, and he can make some big plays both as a thrower and as a runner, then my God, the Cleveland Browns organization is leaps and bounds ahead of where they've been at any point in time since 1999. And they can head into that 2018 NFL draft with 2 first-round picks and feel absolutely no pressure to take a quarterback. They won't have to. Now they've got the young quarterback, potentially the young franchise-changing defensive pass rusher. Now you build around them. And once that happens, the Cleveland Browns could be scary a lot quicker than people want to give credit for. But the key is DeShone Kizer has to show something. Because if he doesn't, then you know, at least in the 2018 draft, that DeShone Kizer's there, he's your backup, that's fine. We've got to go get somebody, whether that's Sam Darnold or Josh Allen, one of those two. We've got to go get that franchise quarterback. You can talk about schedule, and I would like to see the Browns be able to win 2 divisional games this year. Like, I look at Week 4 at Cincinnati as a perfect example of a game they can win, need to win from an organizational standpoint, especially going against Hugh Jackson's old team where he was offensive coordinator. They followed it up the next week with the Jets. So you could look at it. You got Pittsburgh, at Baltimore, at Indy, Cincy, the Jets. The first 5 weeks, the Browns could start off the season maybe 2-3. That wouldn't be a bad start. It would at least give you enough glimmer into hope and seeing what a glimpse of the future could look like. I still think this is at best a 4-win football team. They've got a lot of holes in a lot of places, and they still got a long way to go to fill the cupboard with talent. But they've started something here. And even for Cleveland Browns fans, even if this season is not a success in terms of wins and losses, and you're picking in the top 3 or top 5 or even number 1 overall again in 2018, bear this in mind, that 2018 looks like it has an outstanding quarterback class. So if Kizer doesn't work out, you're going to find your guy in 2018, I promise you. But if DeShone Kizer does show you something in 2017, imagine what you could do with all that draft pick currency in 2018, knowing you don't have to get a quarterback, and you could be in a position to get several more years worth of bounty of picks because somebody else is desperate to find a DeShone Kizer type of guy. It's that simple for the Cleveland Browns in 2017. It's all about DeShone Kizer, DeShone Kizer, DeShone Kizer. And regardless of what happens this season, the only thing to me that matters outside of DeShone Kizer is that Hugh Jackson must be back for 2018, because if the Cleveland Browns fire him because he doesn't have a winning record in his second year with this shitty team, then it just shows you that the Browns are going to continue to be the skid marks of the league for 20 years more.